Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani. I have with me once again my friend in the studio. He is Chidi Ejikeme. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Chidi is a media consultant. He's image maker for Nigeria. You are promoting Nigeria's image, right? And you are doing a lot to invite businesses to this country, asking businesses to package themselves very well so as to attract investors and so on and so forth. And particularly use of words, how to capitalize on using the right words.
Yes, indeed, very much so. Yeah, I would say that's a forte. It's a critical,
that's what somebody said. That, I mean, you're a wordsmith, and that you actually want businesses to know how to use words properly,
yes,
in order to package their businesses.
Yes.
And so we would ask you to help Terra package itself. Good. So Chidi is here today. We want to discuss excellence, promoting the culture of excellence in our society. Nigeria doesn't used to be like this. Right now we can say we are experiencing an era of the triumph of mediocrity. The triumph of mediocrity. Whether you go to governance, education, health, parenting, there is a triumph of mediocrity in every sector at every level, even within our own department, meaning the religious department. The quality of religious practice, the quality of preaching, because today somebody gets up and all he's talking about is what does he expect people to want to hear. So there is mediocrity in every sector. And I remember this poem that I put down some years back. I call it Excellence. Excellence: attempt to do something great and fail, rather than attempt to do nothing and succeed. Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. In all you do, aim for the best and do your best. Isn't this the stuff of which excellence is born?
Yes, indeed.
How do we promote the good image of our country if there is such low level of excellence or performance, if we have such mediocrity in every sector, from the quality of people we pick as our leaders to the quality of service in the social sector, the quality of infrastructures, to quality of our universities and colleges, quality of our health facilities. You can see that we lack excellence. Is this how it has always been in this society? What is happening to us? And how can we turn things around and really programmatically, deliberately promote a culture of excellence? Chidi.
Very good, Father. I heard you say, refer to our country, but Chinua Achebe wrote a book, A Parting Shot, before he died, and he said there was a country.
There was a country.
It does seem that many Nigerians have come to the realization that our country is no longer a country as such. So we need to reassess and rearticulate what nationhood is, what nation building is, and get on board with the project of national development. Once, I think, so this has to do with an identity of crisis. If you question whether there is a country, some people say the country is a geographical expression only. So you have an identity crisis. We need to get beyond that. We need to transcend that. If we understand that there is a Nigeria and that we need to develop Nigeria, then you already have a consensual reality on your hands, if you will.
So we first of all have to be on the same page as to whether there is a country.
Correct, and what that country means to us. It is a tyranny of mediocrity that we have today, and it's worse than terrorism. Billions of people's millions of lives are being they're dashed or without hope, if you will.
Their hopes are dashed. Their dreams are.
So once we do understand that there's a national enterprise that we ought all to embark upon, your first job is done. There's nothing metaphysical or mysterious about excellence. We have had a foretaste of it in Nigeria. A friend of mine once asked me about Igbos and why are they so agitated and what do they want, and they can import this and import that and sell that and the other. And I said, well, my friend, you've already communicated part of the African problem, the African conundrum, and the African state.
Importing
which is a consumption-based reality. I think that I can safely say that for the people that I represent, my people, if you will, they'd rather be producing, selling, and competing in a global market than simply importing for people to buy. I think buying and selling is a rather primitive enterprise, okay? And they know this. But the thing is that the greater and increasing number of our young people don't know it because it's not being taught in schools that there ever was any attempt at excellence in Nigeria. The southeastern region was one of the fastest developing regions in the world until the war happened. And thereafter, all of that is gone. No young person today is aware of that because it's not being taught in school. If you don't tell them that, how are they going to ever aspire to recapture, to transcend, and improve on the past? They can't.
I mean,
there is no past.
I mean,
there is no country.
If you look at the Western region and even the Northern region, the pace at which they were developing before the collapse of the First Republic, I mean, our universities were world-class universities.
Indeed.
So
they churned out remarkable human beings, you know. But today, the question is there a country? Is there an enterprise? Is there a national enterprise? And, you know, that's our problem. We've come to a juncture in our statehood.
For you, we cannot seriously address the question of mediocrity, what you call the tyranny of mediocrity, without first addressing the whole political question, or what people call the national question. Who are we? Where are we going? Do we agree to be going in this particular direction or that direction?
Yes. Well, again, that begs another question. If you say, do we all agree? We don't all have to agree, but we can have existential space for people to aspire in different directions and still be a nation. You know,
of course.
What Hitler might have called Lebensraum, living room space, existential space. We don't need constrictions. There's too much of the existential space is imploding, and that's why you have the problems that you have. People don't feel that their
their personal aspirations could be realized.
Expressed, perhaps are not even legitimate. If you've got someone saying that Western education is haram, is evil, and perhaps my grandmother might differ almost violently, thinking that there is no escape from primitivity without Western education. That would be her view, may not be mine, but these are fundamentally. But we need to have a Nigeria that captures all of this and gives it legitimacy.
So the political question is so fundamental to any of these discussions regarding the economy, regarding education, regarding health, moving forward as a nation. That first of all, there has to be space for the aspirations of the various people to be expressed.
Yes, and for them to feel that although different from their neighbors, also as legitimate and valid as the next person's. That is when you have a successful nation. Only that.
But how are we going to arrive at that? when one of the fundamental problems we have is leadership and the processes for the emergence of our leaders. Because you see, you need leaders to champion what you're talking about. From where we are, Chidi, to where we desire to be, what must we do? I mean, you.
I love what Bolaji Akinyemi, Professor Bolaji has been saying. Yeah. I read an interview of his. It was one of the most measured pronouncements I've yet come across on the national question.
What did he say?
A lot of things. Our starting point ought to be somewhere in the 1963 Constitution. Also, he recognizes that we have to recognize that every major player or tribe in Nigeria has concerns and fears, and they are valid and legitimate.
Correct.
Just because I know mine and I'm familiar with my concerns and fears doesn't mean I should have the intelligence to automatically understand that the other fellow. So, you know, I found that there was some reasonableness in what he was saying. Yeah, having also sat on the conference that they had under the prior administration, I think they did a lot of work and they were able to understand the dynamic of devolution that must occur. And you know, there's an elegance to democracy. You don't need to do everything overnight. Democracy is antithetical to revolution.
Yes, it's
so the revolution is violent and instant. Democracy is slow, elegant, and plays out over time. There are 64 points or so, 64 or 68 in the exclusive list in the Constitution, and going by what the professor is saying,
it's too much.
You know, but if you can even if you get 20 out
for now,
and you have limited devolution, we can live with that and move on and negotiate and keep. It's by development in democracy. Any democracy that's successful is by negotiation through dialectics, dialogue, and elections.
And I wonder why this is so difficult, because we all understand that that's heavy center that we have today in terms of exclusive list 68 elements is because of military rule. And the military needed that kind of structure in order to get hold of the country.
We should understand that period to be an interregnum.
Good. So we should all understand that and then move on. So why is it so difficult for us to recognize that the military needed some unitary kind of system, a very heavy center in order to function? Now that that is out of the way, let us reorganize our country and go back to what it was, status quo ante.
I'm very optimistic that that will happen. I think that there's always an initial resistance to change, an inertia that is natural. It is not tribalistic, it is not partisan. It's just the way of nature, that there's a resistance to movement, and you start your car and move. There is. The wind resists your movement. You know, so there's that natural resistance, but it is inevitable that change must occur. Change is constant. So Nigeria presently is a failed nation, quite frankly. But there's room for optimism. I think that we know what to do. There are many good Nigerians who are intelligent and very educated. It will be done. But we must not hope to have, a revolutionary change overnight. That is wrong. It's not democratic, and it won't. It's not going to happen that way. That's my view, my submission.
So, I mean, this is very cheering. I mean, rather hopeful. But in the last few months, you saw all the debates here and there, and the insults and the hate speeches and so on and so forth. Things are calming down. But are you seeing anything on the work in the works that show that, on account of all the exchanges, the more reasonable ones, the very unreasonable ones, the hate speeches, and the more, like you quoted Ejikeme just now, the more calculated analysis of the situation. From all that, what are you seeing happening now to show that people are taking this seriously and that we are about to move from where we are?
Well, we've almost come to the bottom of the barrel. No way to go but up. that's what happens when you have a failed state. You are at the bottom of the barrel. You got to go up thereafter. As I said, a lot of intelligent, well-meaning, well-intended Nigerians.
Do Nigerians who are, sorry to cut you, do Nigerians who are in the houses of assembly at state level and national level, do they recognize that we are hitting rock bottom? Do they recognize that and that something has to be done urgently?
Urgency is where the problem may lie. It's not the issue of building nations is not ever anything you want to do urgently. You want to do that, you fall into war, conflict, and etc. In spite of the people in the house, the change must come. I mean, we are going to go into an election. Whether people are rigging it or not is irrelevant. You can't rig all elections ad infinitum, ad nauseum. We were sitting here when Nitel was playing games with our lives. We couldn't get a phone. You get a rotary phone. You keep knocking on it for an hour before you can get a dial tone. While we were doing that, people were building satellites and sending out there to improve human telecommunications abilities.
So you can't hold the people down.
So we might be, the devices, the science, the technology, and the instruments to have valid elections will come in spite of what we do here.
It's like the sciences that will help us to have correct census figures.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
it will come. It's we can only resist these things for so long and for so much, and yet the change must come. So I remain optimistic based on that. Nigeria will work. We will get there. It's a new nation. 100 years of doing this is not very long.
So coming back to the topic of excellence, then. Yes, revolution will be violent, will be very destructive. And so, like you say, it is in the character of democracy that things evolve and that the system improves itself.
There's a beauty to it. There's an elegance and a beauty to the tempo at which change was happening in a democracy. That's why it's been so far the most successful
system of
governance. Yeah, governance. So there lies my reason for optimism.
No, I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, a lot of people who see the enormity of our problem seem to have no escape route, as it were, as to how are we going to get out of this mess. But you seem to think that the system cannot withstand this pressure for too long.
There are micro agendas, partisan agendas, and a macro inevitability that we all must live under. Yes. That's the way. That's what it is.
And so something must give. Something must happen. And it is better that we are all part of the making of that change, of that democratic change. You earlier mentioned devolution of powers, an element of restructuring that I think almost every Nigerian who is, committed to our nation today agrees that the exclusive list is too heavy, and that governance at the grassroots should be given some more emphasis. A situation where the local governments are like appendages of the state, and growing up, it was the local government you knew. That was government.
That was the basis for state creation.
Yes.
To try to take governance down to the people.
Yes.
So that is a journey that we only just begun, and it's a journey we must stay on. So how do you hereafter take governance to the people? Restructuring is one way, to untie a Gordian knot that holds everyone, yokes everyone. That's how we feel today. 50 years ago, with a different population density, this Gordian knot might not have been a Gordian knot, but a control mechanism.
Yes.
But when, it's like you have a belt on your belly when you're 20. If you use the same holes to hold yourself, the same belt.
The extension.
Yeah, when you're big, it's impossible. It becomes a belt that will kill you. That's where Nigeria has come. It isn't that we're all so bad and so with our diabolical agendas. It's just that we mentioned the cattle herdsmen the other time. It's a combination of so many things. The climate change and population density is pushing these people southwards. They probably don't want to go because they're finding more inimical realities down there, but they are constrained to go southwards. That's all there is to it. It isn't. They didn't plan it that way. So the population that we're working with, the numbers that we're working with in 2017, isn't what we had in 1970 or 1967. You know, so it's just like with the inoculations. I recall as a child reading that when the vaccines came, because the vaccines had become successful, you had an explosion, a population explosion that was unanticipated and unprepared for. That was one good thing leading to another bad thing. You know, Abuja, the first stage of Abuja was for 750,000 people. That didn't happen. You had nearly 3 times that number. First development, first phase. You know, so it's a matter of planning and social engineering and understanding the dynamics at play.
So your hope is that with one election after another, eventually Nigerians are going to get it right, and that those who remain stuck with the old way of doing things, change will sweep them away eventually. Inevitably. That just as change swept away Nitel, you know, and then it was inevitable that we hook onto satellite.
I recall watching a discussion panel like this, perhaps 7 years before the first cell phone came to Nigeria, and I didn't quite understand what they were talking about. But the scientists were saying, you know, we're putting these systems in place. We're going to circumvent national telephone companies and all of that. And you know, so but the national telephone companies didn't know that circumvention was in the offing. Was imminent. They didn't know. You know, now we have one of the major problems we have is power. While we're here playing with power, the delivery capacities will be developing and growing. One day we find that cheaply you can buy delivery capacity. You know, that government may not be able to control within the private sector. Then they have to scramble to try to get some income out of a new development, but it's going to happen too.
I mean, this is very cheering in the sense that, you know, many of us feel quite overwhelmed about the problems. But Chidi, your own opinion is that you can stop change. Human beings have a hunger, a desire, an innate desire for freedom, and they will be free.
Self-determination.
Self-determination. They will do anything to actualize themselves. So if you remain stuck in control, in centralization, and some central body controlling everything, at the end of the day, the people will circumvent. They will find their way.
We're talking about refining capacities, and then suddenly Nigerians, businessmen, started talking about modular refinery systems. So you can almost say that the reality we're living in now is modular. Take little bits and give them autonomy, look at them independently and individually, and solve localized problems and all of that. That's modular.
So at the end of the day, we are still talking about control going to the grassroots, and the people will see governance as their own thing. I mean, growing up, what did I know about the national government? What I knew was the local government. You know, because I could see them patching the roads. I could see the dispensary. You go to the local dispensary, you had drugs. They were in charge of the local schools, and so on and so forth. So it worked. They were in charge of the water supply. It worked. Now you go to the local areas and none of these things work because whatever handouts come from the state governments, I mean, the local government chairman in many places just not share it.
Again, Nigeria has become such a big country that if it seemed that you were getting away with centralization 50, 40 years ago, you could possibly be, you know, stumbling from moment to moment, generation to generation. But today, it's almost insane, really, to expect a black man to manage a huge enterprise of this nature from the center. It is madness. It's impossible to do.
And on that note, I want to thank you once again for coming to the studio.
Thank you, Father. Had a great time. Thank you.